Time is the great eraser. For humans, time eventually heals all wounds, blurs memories, and forces us to move on. We understand the concept of death. We understand when a goodbye is permanent. But for an animal, time does not exist in the same way. When a dog looks down an empty street, waiting for their owner to return, they are not operating on logic. They are operating on pure, unadulterated hope. To an animal, an owner walking out the door for 5 minutes or 5 years feels exactly the same. They just know that the person who made up their entire universe is gone. Today, we are looking at 4 of the most heartbreaking true stories in recorded history. These are not stories of battlefields or dramatic rescues. These are stories of a quiet, agonizing loyalty that completely defied the cruelty of time. 4 pets who sat down at a train station, a bus stop, or a grave, and simply refused to leave until the day they died. We begin in 1920s, Japan, with the most famous story of devotion the world has ever known. Hachiko was a golden brown Akita Inu who belonged to a university professor in Tokyo. Every single morning, Hachiko would walk his owner to the bustling Shibuya train station, and every afternoon, precisely when the train arrived, the dog would be sitting there, waiting to walk him home. It was a beautiful, unbroken routine of pure love. But in May of 1925, the professor suffered a fatal brain hemorrhage while at work. He never boarded the train to go home. Hachiko sat at the station as the sun went down, scanning the crowded platform, but his master did not appear. What happened next is a testament to an unbreakable spirit. For the next 9 years, 9 months, and 15 days, Hachiko returned to that exact same spot at the train station at the exact time the train was due. He waited through freezing blizzards, pouring rain, and blistering summer heat. He grew old, his body aching with severe arthritis, and his golden fur faded. Commuters would feed him scraps, weeping at the sight of the aging dog who still believed his owner was coming back. Hachiko finally died on a street near the station in 1935, his eyes still watching the tracks. Halfway across the world, during the dark days of World War II, another profound tragedy of loyalty was unfolding in Italy. In 1941, a brick kiln worker named Carlo Soriani found a severely injured street dog in a ditch. He took the dog home, nursed him back to health, and named him Fido, the Latin word for faithful. Every day, Fido followed Carlo to the town square bus stop, watching him leave for the factory, and waiting precisely at the same spot for the evening bus to bring him back. But in December of 1943, the factory was heavily bombed by Allied forces. Carlo was killed instantly in the horrific blast. That evening, the bus arrived in the town square. Fido eagerly watched the passengers step off, searching for the familiar face that was now gone forever. Unwilling to accept the loss, Fido returned to the bus stop the next day, and the next. For the next 14 years, the faithful dog made the exact same journey to the square. Long after the war ended and the town rebuilt, the aging, partially deaf, and blind dog continued his daily vigil. He became a living monument to a shattered world. He passed away in 1958, still waiting for a bus that would never bring his master home. Sometimes, loyalty extends far beyond the places of the living. In 2006, in the town of Villa Carlos Paz, Argentina, a man named Miguel Guzman passed away. His family deeply mourned his loss, but they were also confused by the sudden disappearance of his beloved German Shepherd mix, Capitan. The dog had run away from home shortly after the funeral. A week later, the family visited Miguel's grave at the local cemetery. To their absolute shock, they found Capitan sitting quietly right next to his master's tombstone. The cemetery was completely across town, and the dog had never been brought there before. Nobody knows how Capitan managed to find the exact grave among thousands of others, but once he found it, he refused to ever leave. He lived in the graveyard for 11 years. The cemetery staff took pity on the grieving animal, feeding him and giving him shelter. Every evening, at exactly 6 o'clock, Capitan would walk over to Miguel's grave, lay his heavy head against the cold stone, and sleep. As he grew old and eventually lost his eyesight, he never missed a single night. He died in 2018, his body resting exactly where his heart had been for over a decade. Our final story takes us to the foggy, cobblestone streets of 19th century Scotland. Greyfriars Bobby was a small Skye Terrier who belonged to a night watchman in the Edinburgh City Police. For 2 years, the man and his little dog patrolled the dark, freezing streets together, inseparable in the cold Scottish nights. But in 1858, the watchman succumbed to a severe case of tuberculosis and was buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard. Following the funeral, the little terrier walked to the freshly dug mound of dirt and laid down. The groundskeeper tried to chase the dog away, but Bobby always returned. He braved the brutal Scottish winters, refusing to leave the grave even in the thickest snowstorms. The locals eventually built a small shelter for him near the grave to keep him from freezing to death. For 14 incredibly long years, Bobby remained the vigilant watchman over his master's resting place. He only left the cemetery for a few minutes each day when the local 1 o'clock gun sounded, signaling it was time to eat a quick meal at a nearby tavern. He died in 1872, his 14-year vigil finally coming to an end. These 4 dogs did not possess the ability to read a calendar or understand the concept of mortality. They were driven entirely by a love so profound, so absolutely unconditional, that it completely shattered the boundaries of logic. We often pride ourselves on human empathy, but very few humans could ever replicate the agonizing 14-year devotion of a grieving dog. Their stories are undeniably beautiful, but they are also deeply, profoundly tragic. They spent the majority of their lives frozen in time, trapped in a continuous, endless cycle of waiting for a door to open or a train to arrive. It is a haunting reminder that when we bring an animal into our lives, we become their entire universe. The love they give us is absolute, terrifying in its depth, and permanent. The next time you leave your house and see your pet watching you from the window, remember Hachiko, Fido, Capitan, and Bobby. Remember the immense, crushing weight of their devotion. They are not just waiting for food. They are waiting for their world to return.